Welcome everybody. Let's dig into it today. Let's talk about how stiff hips can affect your backswing and rob you of distance. So I want to go over three things today and really dig into how stiffness or flexibility limitations, particularly in our hips, can stop us from getting the most energy into this golf club and rob us from distance off the tee. So number one is a stiff hip, or a hip that is not moving well, whether it's painful or just tight or stiff, is going to limit our ability to get into our backswing, right? So if our hip is not moving well, it's going to limit our ability to make a full turn into our backswing. And we know if we can have a longer backswing, the more the hand travels and the club grip, right, and hand travels, the more potential energy we can store in our swing, which means if we turn more through that hip, we're able to get more of that potential energy, which means we can then unleash that into the club. So that's number one. It's going to allow us to bring the club through a greater range of motion, longer hand path, more energy, more distance. Okay, number two is a stiff hip, right? We're talking about one that doesn't rotate well, a hip that doesn't rotate well. Well, typically then what happens, if we don't rotate well, we tend to get too much lateral movement. Lateral movement that gets us too far, knee over our ankle, right, and not rotating, so we're getting too far this way, really inhibits our ability to push off the ground and create stress, because we've got our force too far this way. We can have all our force planted and pushing hard into the ground. So if we have a stiff hip, we are not going to be able to keep our force pointed in the right direction. We're going to get too much lateral movement. That's going to rob us of power and distance. Number three is going to change our ability to maintain decent posture. Okay, so what could that mean? If we stop rotating, we're not moving well, that means we may do other things. We may compensate, flatten out our shoulder plane. We may do some funky things with our hands or our elbow because we know that we need to get the club somewhere. And typically when we do that, what we'll see is some change in our kinematic sequence, some loss of our ability to transition as easily, which we'll talk about in another video. And again, that's going to rob us of power and distance. So I hope you found these tips helpful. If you feel like you have hips that are stiff, comment below, give us a buzz. We'll be sure and happy to help you. Take care.